You press play on a video, and for the next 20 minutes, you walk through a version of the United States that almost never appears in textbooks, travel brochures, or Hollywood movies. A country made not of monuments and slogans, but of real places and real people whose stories were quietly pushed into the shadows. That's the journey we're going on today. In this video, we're going to explore a hidden side of the United States. 7 powerful stories that history almost forgot. Some were buried under concrete. Some were erased by laws. Some just faded as the cameras moved somewhere else. And yet, all of them are still there, if you know where to look. So if you only know America through famous landmarks and big headlines, stay with me. Because the U.S. you're about to hear about is older, stranger, and more complicated than the one on the postcards. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes if you can, and let's step together into Forgotten America. Beat, then transition. Story number 1. Before New York, before Washington, before the idea of the United States even existed, there was a city bigger than London, right in the middle of what is now the American Midwest. And almost nobody talks about it. The lost city of Cahokia. Picture this. It's the year 1100. You are standing on a wide plain near the Mississippi River, just across from where the city of St. Louis will someday rise. But instead of skyscrapers and highways, you see giant earthen pyramids stretching toward the sky. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Drums echo in the distance. You are in Cahokia. At its peak, Cahokia was one of the largest cities in the world. Tens of thousands of people lived here. Some estimates say as many as 20,000 or more. That would have made it larger than London at the same time. This wasn't just a random cluster of huts. Cahokia had neighborhoods, plazas, massive mounds shaped by human hands, and carefully planned designs that lined up with the sun and stars. People traded goods across thousands of kilometers, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Artists carved shells and stone. Farmers grew corn in surrounding fields. Spiritual leaders watched the movement of the sky. We are used to hearing that America began when Europeans arrived. But places like Cahokia tell a different story. There were already cities. There were already complex societies, cultures, and long histories. The land was not empty. It was full. So what happened? Cahokia began to decline centuries before Europeans reached the area. Researchers still debate why. Climate change, overuse of resources, political conflict, disease, or a mix of all of these. By the time Europeans arrived, Cahokia was already a ghost of what it had been. For a long time, the ruins were dismissed as mysterious mounds, as if they had built themselves. The idea that indigenous people in North America created such a city simply didn't fit the myth of an empty continent waiting to be discovered. Today, you can still visit the remains of Cahokia in the state of Illinois. The mounds are quiet now. Grass has replaced the sound of drums. Cars roar along the nearby highway, and most drivers have no idea that they are passing one of the greatest cities in ancient North America. Cahokia is still here, but in many ways, it has been forgotten. The village beneath Central Park. Now let's move from the open plains to one of the busiest cities on Earth. New York City, Central Park. Joggers, tourists, dog walkers, street musicians. For millions of people, it's the green heart of Manhattan. A place to escape the noise of the city. But under that peaceful image lies another story. Before Central Park existed, part of that land was home to a community called Seneca Village. In the early 1800s, New York City was expanding rapidly. African Americans, many of them formerly enslaved, were searching for a place where they could live more freely and own land. Some of them began buying property on a rocky, less desirable area of Manhattan, far from the wealthy neighborhoods downtown. That community became known as Seneca Village. By the 1850s, Seneca Village was a thriving, multiracial neighborhood. Black, Irish, and German families lived there. Residents owned homes, went to church, sent their children to school. For many Black New Yorkers, owning land there wasn't just about shelter. It was about citizenship, dignity, and a measure of safety in a city where racism was still strong. And then, the city decided it wanted a park. The idea was to build a large, European-style public park for fresh air and beauty. City leaders chose the land where Seneca Village stood. They labeled the area a slum, even though many residents were stable, land-owning families. Using a legal tool called eminent domain, the government forced the people of Seneca Village to leave. Homes were destroyed. Churches and schools were torn down. The village disappeared from the surface of the earth to make way for Central Park. For decades, almost nobody talked about it. Visitors walked, laughed, and picnicked on ground where entire lives and communities had been uprooted. The story of Seneca Village was not taught, not marked, not remembered in any official way. Only recently have researchers and activists begun to recover the history of Seneca Village through documents, maps, and archaeology. Today, if you visit Central Park, there are a few signs acknowledging the community that once stood there. But if you didn't go looking for it, you might never know. One of America's most famous parks is built on a forgotten village. The prosperity they tried to erase. When we talk about Black history in America, we often hear stories of struggle and suffering. Those stories are real and important. But there is another side that has been quietly buried. The story of Black prosperity, neighborhoods where Black entrepreneurs, professionals, and families built thriving communities in the face of segregation and violence. One of the most well-known examples today is Greenwood, a neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, sometimes called Black Wall Street. In the early 1900s, Greenwood had Black-owned hotels, newspapers, theaters, shops, and doctors' offices. Money circulated within the community, giving people a measure of independence in a deeply racist society. But in 1921, after a white woman accused a Black teenager of assault, a white mob attacked Greenwood. Over the course of about 24 hours, they burned homes and businesses, killed an unknown number of residents, and left thousands homeless. Airplanes were reportedly used to drop burning materials onto buildings. For decades, the massacre was ignored or denied in official records. Survivors were pressured into silence. Schools didn't teach it. Newspapers downplayed it. It was a story many people weren't supposed to know, and Greenwood wasn't the only place like that. Across the country, there were Black towns and neighborhoods, small business districts, farming communities, middle-class enclaves that were pushed aside or destroyed by highways, urban renewal projects, racist violence, or economic neglect. Instead of being remembered as centers of creativity and strength, these places were often written out of the story. The message was subtle but powerful. Black communities were only supposed to appear in history as victims, not as builders. Today, more people are starting to rediscover these stories. Descendants, historians, and local communities are piecing together the evidence. Charred land deeds, old photographs, newspaper clippings, and testimony from elders. They are saying, in effect, "We were here, we built something, and even if the buildings are gone, you can't erase that." Forgotten America isn't just about abandoned places. It's about erased success,